Many trainers in the Pokémon World specialize in one of the 18 types, whether it's because they're a gym leader, an Elite Four member, or sometimes maybe even a champion. And today we're going to look at those who specialize in a type and decide which of them is the toughest challenge in their initial battles. Welcome everyone to the toughest of the type. In the past, we've looked at the normal type and the ghost type, and today we're going to be looking at the water type, a type with 10 specialists, 2 more than last time, which was already 2 more than the first time. Luckily for me, this is the most we'll be doing with in this series. We'll be looking at each of these 10 trainers, what their teams are, what counters you could have at your side, and who you wonderful people voted as the toughest water type challenge. We first start by discussing the water type itself, and see what's inherently tough about those who specialize in this type. The water type is stab super effective against fire, rock, and ground, and resisted by water itself, grass, and dragon. Defensively, the water type resists fire, steel, and itself, but is weak to grass and electric. That's neat and all, but the water type has some extra goodies to look at. The water type is one of the types who have a dedicated weather effect. The rain boosts the power of water moves by 50%, and further reduces the damage of fire moves by another 50%. On top of this, some water types have abilities that also benefit from rain, such as Swift Swim, which doubles speed in rain, or Rain Dish, which passively heals the user in rain, though the rain also makes thunder 100% accurate, so watch out for that. Water types tend to be pretty defensive, usually having high HP and or high special defense, though unfortunately, unlike the last 2 types we've looked at, the learn sets of water types tend to be limited unless they're dual typed, usually only learning water, normal, and ice moves. But with that, we can start discussing the water type specialists now. We start this discussion in the Kanto region, where we meet Misty, Cerulean's tomboyish mermaid. Misty is most well known for being one of Ash's OG traveling companions. And fun fact, her Let's Go gym trainers are named after her anime sisters. But for the game, she's known as being a tough second gym leader. So what teams does she have that make her so well liked? In Gen 1 and Fire Red Leaf Green, she has the same team, Staryu and Starmie. But Let's Go swaps out her Staryu for Psyduck, a Pokemon Misty had in the anime who's just as iconic as her Togepi. Now let's go over her Gen 1 team, since they're probably the easiest one here. Even though Starmie is a psychic type, which could have been a problem for reasons we'll touch on in a bit, but thankfully the devs took mercy and didn't give her any psychic moves. And luckily, the strongest attack Starmie has is base 65 Bubble Beam, because Starmie has a high enough special attack for a second gym leader as is. But when we get to Fire Red Leaf Green, we see that her team has improved. While still the same Pokemon, both Staryu and Starmie have Recover, meaning that like Whitney, Misty can continue healing without potions. Plus, both her Pokemon have the much more annoying Water Pulse. Thankfully, her Let's Go team has become more forgiving in some aspects, but also more brutal in others. As mentioned, she swapped out Staryu for Psyduck, and thankfully, Starmie no longer has Recover. What Psyduck and Starmie do have, though, is Psychic moves, which is a problem when we look at what counters we have against Misty. Obviously, you have Bulbasaur and Pikachu, but you also have Oddish, Bellsprout, and Paris if you're desperate. See why I made a big deal about Misty not having psychic moves before? Because Starmie will outspeed just about anything you have at this point. 3 out of your 4 grass type options being weak to psychic is a big issue. Again, you see these stats? They're bad enough without getting hit with super effective damage. I should also mention that Starmie has Skull, so the physical attacking Paris doesn't even get to properly shine here. Thankfully, Fire Red Leaf Green was probably the hardest her team got, what with her being able to heal herself an extra 5 turns. Misty's other teams though, if you're able to tank the water moves, or just use the tutor moves if you're playing Let's Go, you're sure to pull through. But with Misty now covered, we can head to the Hoenn region, where we meet Wallace, Sootopolis' triple threat. Wallace is a gym leader in Ruby, Sapphire, and Oras, a champion in Emerald, and a contest star in all versions. He's also the only champion who supposedly specializes in a type, and actually specializes in that type. So let's see if this impressive resume makes for a strong trainer. When Wallace is a gym leader, he has the same team: Love Disc, Whiscash, Celio, Seaking, and Milotic. But as a champion, the only Pokemon who stay are Whiscash and Milotic. As a champion, he instead adds Wailord, Tentacruel, Ludicolo, and Gyarados. These teams are quite interesting to say the least. Wallace is one of 3 trainers here to have more than 3 Pokemon. But one of those Pokemon is Love Disc, who might as well not be there. Celio not being fully evolved can be a bit of a hindrance. And in Gen 3, Seeking is much less useful without the physical special split. Emerald though is where his team can definitely cause trouble. Many of these Pokemon have amazing sub moves like Rain Dance, and you can't have a grass type sweep most of his team anymore. As for counters, you basically have all the options you could want. Whether Wallace is the 8th gym leader or the champion, you basically have the entire Hoenn Dex at your disposal. In either team, just about any grass or electric type should do fine. Plus, if you're playing Oras, you could even have Mega Evolution. Looking at these teams, it's hard to say which is harder. Maybe his champion team, with it being tougher to sweep, as I said. He has an immunity to electric, plus Ludicolo takes neutral electric damage, and half his team takes neutral grass damage. Half of his team also has ice moves, and 2 of them have Earthquake. Wallace can definitely be an unexpected challenge. Luckily, his teams should be taken care of with just 1 or 2 Pokemon. It's a good thing Wallace has his contest career. He shows why type specialty champions don't actually specialize in types. But with Wallace now covered, we can head to Hoenn again, because in Emerald, someone needed to be the Sootopolis gym leader, and that someone is Juan, Sootopolis' mentor. Juan was actually the person who mentored Wallace, and so when Wallace decided to become the champion in Emerald, Juan came in to fill his role as the Sootopolis gym leader, giving you a water type gym leader and champion in the same game. And for Juan's team, we see that it's pretty familiar, but instead of Seeking and Milotic, you got Crawdaunt and Kingdra. Crawdaunt does have the same issue of being a Gen 3 physical water type, but at least Crawdaunt has much better stab and Crabhammer. Kingdra though is a way bigger threat than Milotic. Kingdra is a water dragon type, which is only weak to dragon in Gen 3. On top of that, Kingdra has rest with a Chesto Berry and double team. So this is a Pokemon you can't just whittle down. You need to hit hard, otherwise Kingdra can just heal himself. And if Kingdra uses double team, it'll make that job even harder. Even though I could imagine that not many of you have played Emerald, you could just look at this Kingdra and imagine how annoying he is. But with Juan covered, we actually do get to switch regions now. We now head to my turf, the Sinnoh region, where we meet Crasher Wake, Pastoria's pro wrestler. Want to learn about Crasher Wake?
Crash, crash, Crasher Wake! Crash, crash, Crasher Wake!
There you go, that's all you need to know. As a reminder, the order of Sinnoh gyms depends on what version you play. Crasher Wake is the 4th gym leader in Diamond, Pearl, and BDSP, or the 5th gym leader if you play Platinum. And in the non-Platinum versions, his level cap is the same as Maylene's. For all of Crasher Wake's teams, he has the same 3 Pokemon: Gyarados, Quagsire, and Floatzel. Crasher Wake's teams always have great coverage. Gyarados will always at least have Bite and either a Dragon or Ice move. Quagsire is probably the easiest since the most he gets is Rock Tomb. Heck, he doesn't even have any water moves in DP for some reason. But Floatzel is where troubles can definitely start. No matter the version, Floatzel always has a dark move and Ice Fang. And with Floatzel having an amazing base speed stat of 115, you're bound to get outsped even without Aqua Jet. And before we go over counters, let's talk about held items. In Gen 4, only Floatzel holds a Citrus Berry, effectively giving Floatzel more HP if you don't one-shot him. But of course, BDSP went and decked these teams out. Wide Lens for Gyarados to improve accuracy, a Damp Rock for Quagsire to allow rain to last longer, and Floatzel actually still has a Citrus Berry. Personally, I would have gone for like a Muscle Band or something. And as a reminder, gyms in BDSP have higher IVs and some EV investment. Luckily, this is still the point where they aren't full-on competitive sets. Now for counters, you should have some notable options by this point. This is Sinnoh we're talking about, so there's a good chance you have Luxray, and possibly even Roserade if you didn't pick Torterra. Crasher Wake can definitely be as tough as he is a good singer, but as long as you look out for his tricks, you're sure to pull through. But with Crasher Wake covered, we now head to the Unova region, where we meet Cress, Striaton's water triplet. Cress is one of the triplets of the Striaton gym in black and white, being the one you'll face if you chose Tepig as your starter. Cress only has one team as a gym leader, Lillipup and Panpour. By the way, only one initial team is gonna be the norm from here on out. This makes Cress the only water specialist to have a non-water type. As a first gym leader, his team doesn't have anything too crazy. However, Cress does specialize in the workup TM, which will boost his Pokemon's attack and special attack when used. So you're gonna have to be careful about not letting him set up too much. As for counters, you only really have one option, that being the Pansage you're given at the Dream Yard. And I guess a Lillipup of your own couldn't hurt. Cress may actually be an unexpected challenge if you underestimate him, especially if you go for the challenge of not having Pansage on your team. Now it's time for the next water specialist. But like with Hoenn, we actually stay in Unova to meet them. We do, however, jump 2 years into the future to Black 2 and White 2. It's here where we meet Marlon, Humilau's righteous dude. Marlon is certainly a character, what with his not naturally tan skin, and how he seems fine with letting Team Plasma run around, so long as they aren't bringing down the vibes, man. In Marlon's only gym battle, he has Caracosta, Wailord, and Jellicent. He also does not get an extra Pokemon in challenge mode. This team specializes in the Skull TM, meaning that physical attackers like Superior could be burned. Aside from that, other things to worry about are Caracosta Shell Smash, and how Jellicent has both Recover and Ominous Wind with a Citrus Berry, so Jellicent can keep himself up and could possibly get an Omni boost. As for counters, you'll basically have the entire Dex, and none of his team have typings that help with Water's weaknesses. Marlon is certainly an interesting fellow, and if you forgot to pick up a good grass or electric type, then he may just pose the challenge expected of an 8th gym leader. But with Marlon covered, we now head to the Kalos region, where we meet Siebold, the Kalos League's master chef. Siebold here is the only Elite Four member we'll be meeting today. He has proved himself before by beating Alon's Mega Charizard. So what team does he use against the player? Instead of Blastoise, it's Clawitzer, Gyarados, Starmie, and Barbaracle. Clawitzer will be using Mega Launcher to power up his moves. Gyarados has Dragon Dance and Earthquake. Starmie has Light Screen to lower the power of your special attacks. And Barbaracle has X-Scissors for coverage. You know, I honestly never noticed how great these movesets are, but that does make sense when you look at what you can catch for Siebold. 2 grass starters, one having access to Mega Evolution, and a bunch of other amazing grass and electric types, many of which, again, can Mega Evolve. It seems like most players would just sweep through the Kalos League. Game Freak really screwed the Elite Four by not giving them Megas, huh? But don't get overconfident though. Siebold does still have a dragon dancing Gyarados, so he can still make an idiot sandwich out of you in the end. But with Siebold covered, we now head to the Alola region, where we meet Lana, Brooklet Hill's fisherwoman. You got an interesting fact about Lana? Cause I don't. So yeah, her team. Lana's team is Chinchou, Shelter, and Araquanid. Yup, no Primarina nor Eevee. The anime lied to you. What I like is that even though you could sweep with a grass type, it doesn't mean it won't be risky. Shelter has Skill Link Icicle Spear, and Araquanid can hit really hard with Bug Bite, and Volt Absorb Chinchou will prevent electric types from doing their thing. And because this is Alola we're in, you know that you'll need to prepare for a Z move, which you'll find on Araquanid in the form of Waterium Z. For counters, you do have some great grass types to choose from, and they should be fast enough to maybe outspeed Araquanid. This is Alola where everything is slow after all. Lana may not have some grand title like Gym Leader, but if you think that'll hold her back, you may be making a great mistake. But with Lana covered, we now head to the Galar region, where we meet Nessa, Hulbury's underwater model. Now, even though I called Siebold the only water-type Elite Four member, that's only technically true. Galar is currently the only region that doesn't have an Elite Four, but canonically, Galar gym leaders are equal to other regions' Elite Fours. So in universe, Nessa's strength is on par with Siebold's. But of course, Nessa does restrict herself when acting as a gym leader. In her gym, you'll face Goldeen, Aerocuda, and Dreadnought. A funny thing about her team is that all her Pokemon have Swift Swim, but unless you set up the rain yourself, only Dreadnought can use this, being able to set up rain after Gigantamaxing. Aside from that, there is also Whirlpool from Goldeen and Aerocuda. For counters, you'll have access to great grass and electric types, but most notably would maybe be Eldegoss or Electrike. Gigantamax Pokemon should not be taken lightly, so if you don't want Nessa to knock out 3 Pokemon in a row, you're gonna need to know who you're gonna Dynamax, or have a Pokemon with Protect. And now finally with Nessa covered, we head to the Paldea region, where we meet the final specialist, Kofu, Casscarrafa's ticket to Flavortown. Yup, when it comes to water type specialists, we got not just one, but 2 chefs. As the 4th gym leader of Paldea, who weirdly has 1 less Pokemon than the previous gym leader, Kofu's team is Veluza, Wugtrio, and Crabominable. You may find it odd that Kofu's ace is a fighting ice type, but you forget, this is Paldea. We have terrestrialization, this gen's gimmick that will probably only stay for another year or 2. So Crabominable will be a water type who still gets Stab, Rock Smash. For counters, you have a lot of options. With the open world, you can catch just about any water counter you want, but some notable examples could be the Smoliv line and Kilowattrel, or maybe even a dragon type like Psychozar if you want to go that route. Kofu's team is filled with a lot of Pokemon who can hit really hard, so make sure you can take the heat before you enter this kitchen. But now with all the water type specialists gone over, let's see which of them is truly the toughest challenge in their initial battle. In October, I ran polls asking you guys who you thought was tougher, and the results were interesting to say the least. Wallace, Juan, Marlon, Siebold, and Kofu won the first batch of polls. Sorry ladies, but if you're looking for girl power, I suggest the last episode. But the next poll I ran yielded interesting results to say the least. As we now had an odd number, I thought an elimination round made sense. So I made the poll and specified that we were doing an elimination round. If you had asked me who I thought would have been eliminated, I would have said that probably either Marlon or Siebold would be out, but coincidentally, those two got the least amount of votes. Meanwhile, Wallace ended up getting eliminated. Maybe voters were confused as this is the first elimination round I did, but regardless, I continue the polls. The semifinals winners were Juan and Siebold? Wow, recency bias and X and Y's easy reputation sure didn't affect this poll, but sorry to disappoint all of you hoping Siebold would bring Kalos the gold, because Juan was ultimately voted the toughest water type specialist, having about 3/4 of the votes. From there, we did polls to figure out how the other placements should go, including who would be crowned 3rd and 4th. Once again, an elimination round was done with the first rounds as losers. And Misty was eliminated? I specified even more that you were voting on who you thought was easier. Lana was right there. Okay, whatever. Here is how you wonderful people rank the water type specialists. Misty is the easiest water type specialist, followed by Cress in 9th and Nessa in 8th, then Lana in 7th and Crasher Wake in 6th. Starting us off in the top half of the ranking, we have Wallace in 5th. This is then followed by Kofu in 4th and Marlon in 3rd. And taking silver and gold respectively are Siebold in 2nd and Juan in 1st. Do I personally agree with these rankings? Well, I have opinions to say the least. If I were to rank these guys in order of easiest to toughest, it would go Lana, Siebold, Wallace? Okay, maybe I went a little hard on you guys for eliminating Wallace. Marlon, Kofu, Cress, Nessa, Crasher Wake, Misty, and finally Juan. Now, honestly, I don't even remember the Lana battle, which may either mean that I'm unreliable in ranking her, or her battle was just that forgettable. With Siebold, Wallace, and Marlon, they all have the same problem. As late game bosses, you can access about any resource you could need. Kofu, Cress, Nessa, and Crasher Wake are pretty close and interchangeable. I rank them this way because of how much more you can catch for Kofu, compared to your more limited options for the rest. Cress, though, gets up to 5th for more of a toss-up reason. He's the only trainer here who will be the first gym leader you face, so it really depends on if you chose to have Pansage on your team. Finally, for Misty and Juan, I hope I decently explained why they're tough, but I just think that in the end, Juan wins out. Yes, your options against Misty are more limited, but I just think Juan's Kingdra just slightly edges out Misty's Starmie. And there you have it, folks. We have now discussed each of the water type specialists, what teams they have in comparison to what you could have, and made a decision on which of these specialists is the toughest. Granted, the viewer rankings and my personal rankings were different to say the least, but hey, ain't that the beauty of opinions? We all got different ones. But what do you think? Which water type specialist do you think is the toughest? What do you think of the voter ranking and my ranking? Which water type specialist is the hottest and why is it Crasher Wake? Let me know in the comments below. Seriously, Nessa and Crasher Wake, who's the bigger smash? Have a nice day, you wonderful people.
The ring is my rolling sea, the towering waves shape me. Crash, crash, crasher wake, crash, crash, crasher wake. I'm the tidal wave of power to wash you away. Put out the fire, crasher wake, run from the electricity, crasher wake. Ah, ah, ah. The ring is my sea. Hello, dude and young lady.